Hi everyone, welcome to Type Talks. Today we're here to talk about the differences between ENTJ and ENFJ. And so Corena put together this wonderful group of people from the personality hacker community to talk about what makes these types different. Because there are similarities. These two types are EJs. And so we're here to discuss what are the little nuances. All right, so without further ado, let's get started. And so Diane, would you like to tell us a bit about you?
Sure. So I'm Diane, ENFJ, and I guess what I do for work, I'm a clinical pharmacist. I specialize in mainly type 2 diabetes and working with patients one-on-one in that arena. And I'm super into type and personality hacker is where I'm coming at this from. They're kind of my main philosophy. And just really excited to be here and talk about the similarities and differences among us.
Yeah, you're in a group of like-minded personality hacker folks, so good on you. And Ari?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Ari. I live in Arlington, Virginia, as of very recently. I moved here for my job, which I work in email marketing and marketing automation for a tech company. And I also am part of the personality hacker community where I met all of these lovely people who I'm really excited to be here with.
We're all instant friends through the thing that is personality hackers, so this is free advertisement for them. You're welcome, Joel and Antonia. And Réna?
So my name is Réna Jared. I hail from Ottawa, Canada. So I'm the only Canadian in the group today. And I love everything personality. I think I've always loved everything personality type. My background's a bit strange, maybe for an ENFJ. I was in the military as a logistician for 22 years. And once I retired, I got involved in instructional design and training for a military audience. And I have 4 kids and a husband and a great dog.
Lovely. I'm also in Canada too, so you're not alone. And Jeff?
All right, I am Jeff, ENTJ. First of the group. So I am hailing from Los Angeles, and my day job, I make tools for knee and shoulder surgery, so sports medicine, medical device manufacturer. My passion project that I've put a lot into lately is building automation for Mac users. And I think that very much satisfies my TE proclivities. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Sounds like success. And Lisa?
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Lisa. I live in St. Petersburg, Florida. I work at a nonprofit that raises and trains guide dogs for the blind and service dogs for veterans who are suffering with post-traumatic stress. Additionally, I am a published author. I have 1 novel that's published and hopefully another one on the way. Fingers crossed.
I find it very fitting that you work with guide dogs and your dog barked. It was like perfect synchronicity there. So, and Corena?
I'm Corena. I'm from Roanoke Park, California. Right now I'm a student, so I'm just doing side jobs, mostly construction and catering stuff. And yeah, I enjoy personality stuff.
I have to give a quick shout out to Lisa's book because I totally have read it and it's a really fun read. So you guys should go check it out and find it. It's a great book. Say the title because I'm forgetting it right now.
It's called Essence. It's about cults and adrenaline junkies in Yosemite National Park.
So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, I will link it down below. So yeah. All right. And hi, my name is Joyce, and I'm a certified MBTI master practitioner, and I facilitate the instrument in organizations. I also help people on the self-discovery process of figuring out their best fit type. All right. Very cool. And so ENFJs and ENTJs, I'm wondering, what are some things that are really frustrating to deal with when planning?
I would love to kick this one off if you guys don't mind, which I say because I just came home from a 9-day vacation to Ireland with my family, 9 of us, and there was a lot of planning involved, which made me realize as an ENTJ how much I both love and despise being in charge of all the plans for everybody. I was definitely noticing the difference between how I was reacting to the planning versus how I imagine an ENFJ would have been reacting to the planning, specifically in the sense that I felt I had planned this perfect trip. And if everybody would just shut up and do what I wanted to do, they were going to have the greatest time because I planned it for them and it was perfect. And I took into account all of their individual interests and desires and everything. So just shut up and do it, and you're going to love it. And then inevitably, when humans protested, as humans do, I had a lot of trouble with keeping my patience because I certainly felt like my extroverted thinking had already done everything. Everybody just do what I want and you'll thank me later, which I think if I were an ENFJ, I probably would have been much more sensitive to the emotional nuances of all of the people rather than wanting to bulldog forward with my plan because it was perfect.
That is so true, Lisa. Extroverted thinking, it gets really annoyed at inefficiencies. So it's like, it's so inefficient that you're not listening to this plan. Oh my gosh.
It's so funny from an ENFJ perspective. I think there's similarities there in that when I'm planning a trip for a lot of people, I do try to take people's individual interests and things into account with the plan. But then the plan really gets thrown out the window when we're there. And I really need to react in the moment. So whatever it is, however people are feeling, if we want to change the plan, like I'm not personally attached to it in any way, the way it sounds like maybe you were experiencing that. It's more about the moment. And if people aren't enjoying it, then that throws the plan out the door and it's easy to just kind of come up with something different. I don't know how Ari or Réna or Corena or Jeff want to chime in, but
I don't want to diverge too much, but from a different take on that, I don't have a family. So when it comes to planning, a lot of it right now is individual. I love planning because it sounds like, Lisa, if you had planned for yourself, it would have gone flawlessly. But there's these other annoying factors such as other human beings. But I love planning so much, especially like planning for contingencies. I think travel, this comes into a lot for sure, where I get such satisfaction. It's almost like travel's a test of your personal systems. And I even write notes down like during trips that's like improvements for next time. I forgot that, or like add this to your system. And so I love, especially like going to the airport and you have everything on lock. Like your systems are so good that you have minimal stuff in your pockets. Your passport's ready to go. Like you get through that line for the security super quick. And also they're like building in contingencies of like, oh, okay, where am I going to have food later? What is the plan for tomorrow? When you actually get on the trip, I think that itinerary, it's not super rigid. Like a lot of flexibility is built into it, but I'm planning for flexibility. It's not like planning for spontaneity. Right, so I didn't want to like diverge too much from group planning, but I did want to make a note on like personal planning there.
Right, absolutely. I feel like I agree in the sense that for me, my plans have the illusion of spontaneity and freewheeling fun, and really that's in the plan. Now's the time.
Yeah, the ENTJs and their planned spontaneity could be an EJ thing too. It's like, yeah.
I wanted to add to that a little bit. If I'm traveling solo, I'll actually take notes of what I could add to my system for the next time around if I'm traveling. Or so I kind of have like a post-process. This is what I would add to my system, so that when I'm in the moment, I can be more adaptable. So from my perspective, I think what I really enjoy using my FESE together. And so I'll follow the general plan, but like Diane said, if I see that the needs of the group have changed, then I want to be in the moment so that basically I can meet the needs and continue to meet the needs, and not get stuck and fixated in what was my original plan. But if I'm by myself, I think the travel experience is completely different because you can totally, then you're focused on what your needs are. And in fact, that might be an area of nuance as well, because I'm not always sure what I would want to do if I was traveling by myself. That might be a way to hand off the baton to someone else, because now I got to NI that a little bit more.
Yeah, what are your actual personal emotions? What are those things? Can you eat them?
And the interesting thing about that is I actually think I prefer to travel alone because I can get really, like Lisa said, I can get really frustrated when things don't go according to the plan. And so if I'm by myself, then it doesn't matter as much because I'm the only factor that can like really change that. Whereas like my family, they don't like to plan things. And so like vacationing with them can be really frustrating sometimes because they'll like we went to Portland a week or two ago and we got there and they're like, "Okay, what's the plan? Like what are we doing?" And I'm like, "We don't have a plan." Or so then if I suggest a plan, then they're like, I don't feel like doing that." Or like things like that. So it's almost like this love-hate relationship with going on vacation with other people because I have to take them into account as opposed to like if it's just me, that's the only thing I have to worry about.
I'm curious how, since seems to be so tangential to spontaneity, I wonder how our differences in relationship to spontaneity, because I remember the first profiling session that I ever experienced was with somebody from the Facebook group from PH. And she was trying to figure out judge or perceiver, and she was asking about spontaneity. And I was like, actually, I'm going on a trip this weekend, and I am. It was a friend's birthday. I was like, I'm planning to not have to abide by anything. I'm just going to go with the flow. She's like, so you're planning to be spontaneous? And I was like, yeah, for sure. So like spontaneity is totally acceptable in my planning world if it has been accounted for prior. Otherwise, it irks me for sure.
I feel like I say that same thing often. Even when I am planning on going to do something, if I haven't already decided prior to going to do the thing that I'm just gonna like go with it, it's probably not gonna go that way. And if it does, it's not gonna feel as good. And also I think kind of like Lisa was saying, you know, like if I've come up with a plan for what we're gonna do, I've taken into account like what everyone's needs are, what everyone wants to do, what some people don't like, what other people do like, which people would speak up or not speak up about the things they want to do. And if once you're in the situation in the moment and, you know, certain people derail those plans, it's more than knowing that if we just go with that the people who aren't going to speak up in the first place, they're the things that I've already planned ahead of time for them, because I know they're not going to speak up for what they want to do, are just going to kind of get steamrolled over. And if I try to, in the moment, then redirect the energy, then it causes some response from the rest of the group that's not always great. So I would say that's probably frustrating.
So this is an interesting conversation on plans. So what I'm hearing from both sides is you all would prefer planning. And you guys do it beforehand. ENFJs are more likely to make other people feel good and they're not attached to the plan. Whereas it seems like the ENTJs get more irritated at a lack of efficiency in the plan because they're like, this plan is the best plan ever. If people followed this, everyone would be happy. So yeah, there's more emphasis on the system. Like, why doesn't everyone just follow the system for an ENTJ? And so my next question for everyone is, how do you approach or deal with other people's emotions?
So I think I can say stereotypically here, I'm just going to throw out that I believe I'm a harmonizing ENFJ. So I really experience other people's emotions in that they pretty much just hit me. So I've had to spend a good chunk of time just figuring out how to deal with that, and life at the same time. Where I have a difficulty is my relationship to my own emotions, and then sort of figuring out what's mine and what belongs to someone else, and going from there. And I think that I tend to take more responsibility for someone else's emotions than is healthy. This is it's been another area of growth for me, because I recognize that in taking someone else's responsibility or taking responsibility for someone else's emotional experience, then I'm not allowing them to have their emotional experience. And so that's kind of the thing that I remind myself before I jump in now. I'm like, wait, hold space. But I think it's a distinction, because FE seems to have this compulsive reaction to meeting someone else's emotional need. And it's if it's your driver function, it's really tricky to hold that rein.
Yeah, I would second that big time. It's been a big learning thing to realize that it's not my job to influence everyone's emotional experience, and it's not also my failure when I can't lift them up. You know, some people just need to go through their own process, and so that's been interesting to balance and an interesting thing to learn. You know, where are my gifts needed? Where are they appreciated? And where are they just unwelcome? And so learning to sort of have timing in that, and also be okay, I guess, with people saying, no, thank you. This is something I need to work on myself.
Yeah, so it seems like the ENFJs want to close the loop with people's feelings. It's like, I feel responsible for your feelings, so I want you to feel good or get to your emotional equilibrium where you're emotionally okay. And it's like, I want closure on your emotional okayness, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it's like, I want you to be good. Like, I just don't want you to be sad. You don't have to be super happy, but I just want you to be good. It's kind of that in between. I feel like the more I've talked about this, I don't have the depth that an FI user has when it comes to emotion. There's lots of breadth, and I'm always aware. But as far as really taking that time to go deep, the way an FI user has the ability to do, it's just not a strength.
I feel like for me, I view other people's emotions definitely differently than the FE users. For me, though, it's a great emphasis on paying attention to and being sensitive to other people's emotions. But I think for me, it feels like a great responsibility that I have. It's not necessarily something that I naturally find myself, it's obviously, I care, I want people to be happy, but the act of filling their needs emotionally does not necessarily fill my cup the way that I would imagine it fills the cup of a FE user. In fact, oftentimes it sort of drains the cup because I'm having to work so hard to be so sensitive and so delicate and so responsive to people's feelings that, at the end of the day, they may feel very happy and I feel very exhausted, but it's still important to me. So I would say, probably to sum it up, it's very much a double-edged sword for me, in the sense that I'm so in tuned with it, but at the same time, I'm also so exhausted by it oftentimes.
I also find I have a lot more patience for people who want to do something with their emotions. Like, if someone is struggling with the same emotion over and over and over again, and I'm like, why aren't you doing anything with it? Then I have a lot less, like, my patience just goes down the hill to the point that I'll be like, no, stop talking to me. I don't care. But if they're like looking for advice, or if they're looking for help with something and they're expressing their emotion in that way, I tend to be really receptive to that and really open and hopefully helpful.
I think that's interesting. For sure, it is, like, if you don't want to do anything about it, that's tough, which is funny because I had a FI Dom send me a video the other day of Simon Sinek and opening up and talking about just sitting in the mud with a friend or with somebody, and like not necessarily needing to fix them. So I've been doing a lot of FI work lately and trying to think about that. I think it is very contextual, where, like, if it's something at work, like, just get over it. Everybody has those emotions, but just power through it, and, like, cry when you get home or something. Like, I have emotions too. I just know that there are certain times that they can come up, and there's certain times that are not quite as appropriate. I think that other people's emotions, like Lisa said, can be a huge drag on me. Like, as an ENTJ, I already probably bite off more than I can chew most times in life, only like the past 15 years or so. And so I feel like there is already limited amounts of resources. Getting back to a TE thing, right? Like, resources are time and energy and mental bandwidth. And like, I was just talking with Corena about this yesterday. I have so many unread text messages and calls that I need to make and need to get back to. That's a constant struggle in my life of like making sure I get back to people in a timely manner. I think I'm at like 70 messages right now that I'm like, I need to spend this weekend like getting back to people. And then where people will be emotionally like a drag, that's like, you didn't get back to me, or like they take things personally, is so the opposite end of the spectrum of what I really appreciate in a friend. That's like, we can just catch up every couple of months if we need to, or every week. Like it doesn't really matter, but like if you can just get right back into it and nobody is like, oh, why didn't you do this? Like I feel a huge emotional drag, or a huge like mental bandwidth drag, when I'm like, how do I craft this message to this person that lets them know that I don't take it personally, I didn't get back to you for like a week. And then when they do, I'm less likely, like they move to the bottom of the stack of what like who I get back to, just because then I have to put extra like bandwidth into figuring out how to craft a message to tell you it's not you, I'm sorry. Like, so yeah. But the one thing I do want to say is that I know the FI is in there like working away. It's not like I have no emotions. Like I can feel really like empathetic towards somebody, especially in a sense or in a context where like somebody's feeling left out or like not part of the group. I've noticed that about myself for a long time, like since college. So that's a different context versus somebody like getting butthurt that I didn't get back to them in a timely manner. And I don't know if that's like a mirror neuron type of thing that's universal, or if that's just like little baby FI being like, oh. So that's my take on some of that.
Not to just like be the third person to say, or second person to say same to Réna, but same to everything Réna said. And just, I think I feel everyone else's emotions really intensely. And it, like she said, it's often really hard to sort through what is mine and what is someone else's, which I think also makes it harder. Like I think both Diane and Réna said, just knowing there's a point where someone just kind of needs to handle it on their own. You can't really be a part of it, or they don't want you to be part of it. Or maybe you being part of it is the problem. And I think that's harder to detach from, especially, you know, depending on how close I am with the person and how emotionally invested I am in that relationship. It makes it even harder than it already is with a stranger sometimes, to be able to separate what is mine and what is theirs emotionally. Because then it's almost merged with my identity. So it's hard, but it's something that you know, is also super fulfilling when people do need and want that support and that encouragement. But I can also relate to what Corena said. I can get impatient when people are not trying to improve on how they're feeling. If it's a matter of, I don't want to be dramatic, but like drowning in self-pity. I think there's a point where my patience starts to go away for that. So if people are showing that they really do want to grow and, you know, evolve from this space and get to a better place, you know, that's great. But if you're not, then it'll be a lot easier for me to take my step back and keep moving.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that with EJs, they tend to favor expedient decision making. And so eventually, if a person is too much wallowing in self-pity for too long of a time, it's like, come on. The EJ-ness is like, pick it up by the bootstraps, come on. But there does seem to be, with the ENFJs, there is this focus on the other person's emotions. There seems to be a strong sense of responsibility there, and you feel compelled and driven to help them there. And it might even give you energy to connect and bond and have that relationship with that person. Whereas the ENTJs get drained by emotions or having to deal with other people's emotions. And it's like, if you're going to bring up emotional stuff, also be able to do something about it too. And it's like, sometimes people, it seems like they get upset over small things in the ENTJ's eyes. So it's like, And so the next question I have for you all is, NI darkness, how do you relate?
Can I just compliment you first, Joyce? Like already I'm seeing what a beautiful situation this is, just with your ability to sort of sum up what we said. So thank you so much for helping us with that. It's really nice. Now we can do your question.
And maybe I don't know that I explained this question on the chat, but so me and Jeff had been talking about like the tendency for us to go really dark sometimes. And like for me, one of the recent things that I noticed is that it's almost like I like to go as dark as I can because it almost like prepares me for that in case it like comes up. But also like dark humor, just general, like the darkest sides of humanity, things like that. There's some sort of a draw or a pull there. And it seems like when I was talking with Diane about it, that ENFJs kind of experience that a little bit different. So that was kind of where I was poking with that question.
Jeff, you were excited to jump into this. You want to lead it off, and then maybe we can bounce off of what you have to say?
I don't know how much this is like an NI thing. I just know that I'm very appreciative of dark humor for sure. Like some of my favorite jokes are wildly inappropriate in most situations, and I will still say them in most situations. So my humor tends towards dark for sure. I think a lot about like darkness in humanity, and depending on how everybody else's like experience of NI darkness, we can flesh that out more. But almost like as a constant. And I was curious too, just if that's like an NI thing or if that's just kind of personal preference among people.
So I think when I appreciate darkness, it's actually coming from my TI. And it's because I'll basically, and maybe the example to use is if I am in a relationship with someone who is not sorting themselves out and continues to emo dump on me, then my TI will become highly, highly activated. And that's usually where I get super dark. And in my head, I'll be having a whole other conversation. And especially when I was younger, I didn't have like as much of a filter. And so the conversation sometimes came out. But it's been interesting because, yeah, I think I will have the second conversation in my head where my TI is saying like, this is what you want to say. And it is definitely dark. And that's where my dark humor comes from. And I think it's usually triggered though, when I'm in a situation with people. So I guess this is a question I have. Do I have dark humor if I'm not around other people? Do I need like that context as a backdrop? Is this a difference between the ENTJ and the ENFJ? Because I think there is similarity in the humor. It might be coming from a different place. The behavior could look the same, but I'm wondering if we have the same triggers that pull it out of us.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thought because similarly, I feel like my dark humor and sarcasm really comes more from my TI. Sarcasm is a really good way to say what you really want to say by hiding it and being nice and just sarcastic, right? So I definitely use sarcasm when I really want to let out a truth and I'm too much of a wimp to just say it. And that does come out with other people. I think it's interesting though, if we try to relate it back to NI, because I think there is a difference in how we're sort of looking at the future. I had an interesting conversation with Corena, and maybe she'll share it in a minute, but with sort of when something scary happens, she'll do a better job of explaining this, but when something scary happens, I'm going to let her explain that. But the way I look at sort of the future, I don't find myself going too dark. So if there's some sort of thing that was hard to experience, if you will, I think that that's a difference between FI inferior and TI inferior, in that FI, it becomes like an experience becomes part of who you are. And it's different than with TI, because TI is it's easy to separate from the emotions, whereas with FI, it is the emotions. And I'm not making a ton of sense here, so I'm hoping some of the rest of you can chime in and maybe add to this. I think that it's something, though, because for me, I'm not thinking about like how I might feel in the future. That never comes into it. I'm thinking about like what I want other people to be feeling in the future, potentially, and it's usually fairly happy. So I think that's a difference, and I'd love to hear how the rest of you relate to that.
Something that was interesting, I think, that came up, better plug my computer in before it dies. Something that I thought was interesting was relating it back to fourth function, because that is something that came up when Corena and I were talking. I was like, well, I run these, when it comes to thinking about the darkness in humanity, I run these NI simulations that are just like the worst of the worst cases at like a micro level, like people's individual experience, just atrocities and things like that. And I wonder if that ties back into like the darkness of FI, and whether there's like almost like a helplessness there that I think about, and then I use that darkness and I dump that into NI, and NI is like, here's a bunch of super dark simulations. So I wonder how much of that does come from inferior function, and that it is just like NI takes it and runs with it.
Well, and along those lines, because the experience that Diane was talking about, so when me and my family were flying back from Portland, they like told us that we were going to descend, or like we were going to reach ground in like 20 minutes. And we went through like some of the worst turbulence. And like 2 hours later, we've heard nothing from the person, and our plane got hit by lightning. And so I was with my whole family, and I like in the moment, I wasn't worried about me dying. I was worried about my family dying and me being the only one to survive. And I like ran through that entire simulation. Like I like went all the way to the point that I had like buried all of them, had like taken over the house finances, and like taking care of like all of the things like that I needed to take care of. And I was like crying on the plane. And it's like I was crying because I had like I don't even know. It was a weird experience, but that was where I was like almost experiencing the emotions as if it was happening. And then I've noticed in the past, I've had things where like something really unexpected happened, and then it happened again later. But because it had happened once, I prepared myself for it to happen again, and I experienced no emotions around that, like when it happened. Whereas the one that caught me off guard, I'm still dealing with the emotions. Like they're there, and I don't know what to do with them because I didn't process them ahead of time. So yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was hoping you would share, because it's almost like what I'm hearing you saying is that as a TE Dom, your own emotions slow you down in a lot of contexts. So if you can just think about them ahead of time before they even happen, it's like you can pre-process and they're not going to slow you down. Is it kind of like that?
I also wonder if there's an element of, I think Antonia said that like via John Beebe, maybe that like the second function can work to cushion the blow of like something to the fourth function. Haven't fleshed that one out yet, but just putting that out there. And so I wonder if, like Corena, in your case, running these simulations like softens the blow of what you would feel later, or something like with dark humor, where maybe NI takes a simulation and runs with it that came from like an FI dark place, but then it's almost like comic relief is necessary to deal with such dark things. And I also wonder if this is even a thing with NI. I've talked to a lot of NI users who are very into the intricacies of language, like puns and like just appreciation of language. And that definitely plays into comedy for sure. So I'm wondering if that's like the perfect thing. It's like, and I takes it and runs with it and like plays with language a little bit and finds something funny in like the otherwise almost unbearable darkness. Lisa's dog agrees. You need to partner mute dogs with blind people.
I know.
Speaking of dark, sorry, I didn't mean to go there.
Yes. Yes. Okay. What I was going to say, I've been quiet while you guys are talking about this because at first, I must admit, I heard anti-darkness and I was like, what's that? But as I'm sitting here listening to you guys, specifically, Corena, what you said about sort of feeling the emotions ahead of time so that you're prepared, and then how you wrapped it up perfectly, Joyce, with like it's an expediency thing. So if I kind of pre-grieve, then I can be more efficient when the thing actually happens. I definitely resonate with that a lot. I specifically think that my relationship with hope as a concept is very tempered by that, because I think that I don't like to hope for things because I don't want to be disappointed by them. And so I think that there is sort of a sense of running multiple simulations of all the terrible ways that things could potentially work out, processing how I would feel if it happened that way, realizing that maybe it's not that bad, or if it is, coming up with a plan for how I'm going to survive the thing, and then when the thing actually happens, 9 times out of 10, it works out perfectly, or, it's one of the minor inconveniences in the scale of the 10 things that I've problem solved what I will do. So I very much think that you guys have nailed it. Like I'm planning to pre-grieve and pre-plan so that I can hit the ground running whenever disaster actually strikes, if it does strike.
Yeah. And so you'll notice with people who have NI and FI together that they tend to project themselves into the future, or how they'll feel about the future into the future. So yeah, like you'll have ENTJs saying it, INTJs or ISFPs talking about how whenever they do think about the future, sometimes it's also about them into the future, or how they'll feel into the future. It's very it has some FI-ness to it.
Something too that I wanted to note very quickly that I had a little laugh of myself was Diane a moment ago was saying that when she thinks about the future, she tends to think about how she wants other people to feel in the future. And I was like, what? People do that? That like completely blew my mind, which, maybe says some things about me that the world ought to probably not know and I should keep quiet, but it was that assaulting to my senses that people do that. I mean, I care about people. I want people to be happy, but I'm not sitting here running, I'm going to stop talking, but you get what I'm saying.
I think
Glad
that's
you
a big
mentioned that.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
It's a big thing, and I think it's both. Well, for an ENFJ, it can be, I don't want to say traumatizing, but if your plan is not going as predicted, and you can see the emotional hurt that people are experiencing, it's really crushing.
Yeah.
And so I will say I run those sims all the time, and yeah, I think it actually speaks to one of the other questions Corena had about hierarchical situations and like reading the room. This is one of the reasons why I think that FE tries to do that, because it helps to prevent that crushing disappointment you have if you've disappointed the room, right? Or if you've influenced disappointment in the room, I guess is probably another way to say it.
Yeah. And I wonder if like ENFJs, they don't project their own emotions into how it'll play out in the future, because they don't know how they want to feel in the future. Like it's like, well, I don't think about my own feelings enough to want to know how I'll feel in the future. So that's not even relevant. It's not even important.
I just wanted to add, I think the big piece that we haven't talked about yet is something we learned in profiling dynamics, which is the certainty and lack of certainty of the fourth function. And that's a big piece here. So for us, like there is no FI. That's not a thing, as Joyce was saying. But FI is in a really not a great place if you're an ENTJ. And so yeah, at 100% like would be draining, and there's no way you would have bandwidth to keep that up. But the distinction is like the FI, I think, feels like it has no choice, because that is how it illustrates effectiveness. Like that is our version of effectiveness. So for FE, like you're basically providing value to the room by demonstrating that harmonious effectiveness, whereas you guys are bringing it through TE, right? So if we can't do it, then that's why I say it's like crushing, because we're supposed to be able to.
Yeah, well said. And you also said a point earlier, Réna, about how someone else will start the dark humor, but you can continue it. And I think that's very true. It typically is a thinker type, whether it's high TI or high TE, that says something super offensive or like super on the edge humor. And then the ENFJ may follow it out of a sense of camaraderie and connection. And they might enjoy dark humor, but they might not feel permission to say it until a thinker in the room breaks the ice and says the first offensive thing. And then the ENFJ is like, it's appropriate now. I can say the things. All right. And so, what is your approach to personal emotions? Do you need to process them with others? How do you experience and process your own emotions?
Hi, Jeff, on the journey of emotional competence. Man, this is funny and coming at an interesting time, this question, because I've been doing some kind of deep coaching through the lens of personality type, and worked a lot on NI, and then FI was following close on the heels of that. So just got done with some FI stuff. And I think it's really impressive the way that FI DOMs are able to just process their emotions. And whether it's an NI thing or not, I really appreciate good articulation and use of language, the right word in the right situation. Yet it's frustrating that I cannot oftentimes articulate my own emotions, even to myself, not like to another person. I remember somebody's like, here's a feelings wheel. And I'm like, oh, I can just look at the words and see like how I feel. I'm like, this is useful. So processing them with others, like absolutely not. That is my own shit, like my own stuff. And like I'll go do that by myself. However, somebody that I trust a lot and who is like in this community and was in a good space with helped me work through some personal emotions. Just in like a coaching capacity. And I found it incredibly useful and helpful to come to a conclusion of like going deeper, how like an FI Dom would do it anyways. Being able to like identify some feelings around something, go a little bit deeper into what that means, and like really get down a couple levels to like what the core value is that is being like violated or touched upon in that particular like emotionally strong situation. So I know that I won't have access to that all the time, but having a guide help get me there was just so powerful, knowing that like I'm just learning to process that on my own, and that would take me a week or two to decide to like get in the mud with that, and then maybe a week or two to like draw those conclusions from that. Watching that all happen in a matter of like, I don't know, probably 20 minutes with somebody else, really last weekend opened my eyes to the fact that it can be really powerful to process them with somebody you very much trust and who knows what they're doing, because otherwise I wouldn't touch those emotions with somebody else.
I feel that I have a very interesting relationship with my feelings, in the sense that I find them to be exceedingly important, and I spend a lot of time kind of treasuring them, I think. And I think at the same time, I have a terrible relationship with them and I never know what they are. And and I think that the way that disparity plays out for me is that ever since I was a child, I've kept a journal. And I feel like that's been the most beautiful NI/FI place for me, because oftentimes I won't know how I'm feeling until I start writing. And then in the process of writing, I'll have a like, oh, you're upset, kind of revelation with myself through that process. I think that when I do identify the feelings, again, I feel that I want to treasure them. They're so important to me, the way that you would treasure a 3-year-old baby, right? But at the same time, if I'm not consciously trying to dive into them and work through them and figure them out, I have such a detached relationship from them, because they're not helpful in my decision making, I think, most of the time, that I've literally gone through situations where I've been so out of balance with what my gut is telling me, what my heart is telling me, that I had a moment about 10 years ago. I'd gone through a really bad breakup, and I I had to say to myself, like my stomach would be hurting and I'd be like, I'm sad. I am sad. This means I am sad. And then for the next couple of years, I would make a concerted effort when I was feeling a feeling, I would say out loud, like, I feel happy. I feel good. I feel okay. And even to this day, I still sometimes will do that. My husband will laugh at me because we'll just be sitting somewhere and I'll be like, I'm happy, and he's like, good for you. Do you want a cookie? I don't understand. But it's like something about, I have to, I'm trying to like capture it and put words to it so that I remember that that's what I'm feeling. This is not eloquent at all, but the too long didn't listen version is, I don't know.
And that's actually really inspiring hearing you say that, because I asked, well, so I'm in Life Path, and this was FI week last week, and I asked Antonia about like my relationship to FI, because like the way that I feel like it shows up for me a lot is I am not aware of my emotions until they explode. And then it's like, okay, now I have to do like damage control because it exploded, and it exploded usually in a spot that was not ideal. And she was saying how like the key to personal growth with your FI, and I'm not going to say this anywhere as good as she said it, but is essentially that, and like having humility and accepting that like one, it's not like for an inferior position, it's not going to be complex emotions. It is just going to be, I'm happy, I'm sad. Whereas like I feel like when I deal with my own emotions, I have this compulsion to like logically explain what they are and why they're there. Like I can't just experience it. I have to know where it came from, what it's doing, what I can do to get over it, and not just experience it. And so I currently am at the spot that I am trying to learn to like my emotions more, because I still don't.
Those pesky emotions, they keep me from being productive.
So I think you're going to hear a bit of a flip as we move into the ENFJ. But it's still an interesting thing, because first off, to hear Jeff say like, no way in hell do I want to do that with other people. Like, no way in hell can I not do it with other people. I must have other people to even have any chance of figuring out how I feel, because I'm so aware of how everyone else feels. I'm almost defined by how everyone else feels. So I really do need people to understand how I feel. And it's just not something that I strive for often. It's not something that's on my radar very often, how I personally feel. I guess that's where I'll start, and then I'll riff from where Ari and Réna take it.
She went off camera? She was like, I really don't want to talk about my emotions, man.
Too much pressure. Sorry, guys. So I echo some of what Lisa said. For me, journaling has been really, really rewarding, because in the moment I'll have no idea what I'm actually feeling. I can also resonate with, my body feels icky, and we know that we store energy and emotion in our body, and I'll be like, oh, I feel that in my shoulder. What the heck? And so through journaling, I'm able to identify things. And if I read back what I've written from previous journal entries, then I can kind of get a better idea of like what it was I think I was feeling. I also use music to kind of cue up a feeling. So I'll have this overall feeling that I need to be sad. And so then I'll look for my sad playlist and I'll play that, which apparently is kind of an FI thing too, that they'll actually have playlists to do this. And it was something that I heard and I realized that I did it. Of course, my playlist is not really organized. I just have to flip through and find the right songs. But on my own, I often feel like I'm almost like an empty vessel. I just kind of feel contented, and I don't have a strong emotion at all unless I start digging for something, or if I have that spontaneous feeling in my body and then I go to my playlist, or if I've experienced an event that was traumatic or caused me to have a reaction, and then I'll journal it and read it back. I will say though, there have been a couple of occasions in my life where it was hugely traumatizing. Here we go. When our last dog died, it was really, really quick. Like, she was a young dog and it was sudden, and she just got really, really sick. And I could not process it with other people. Even now, it's like, whew. I basically had to withdraw and cocoon. So I don't know if that was like me gripping completely. I have no idea. But the more intense the emotion or the emotional experience, then I've noted that there have been a couple of occasions where I don't actually want to process with other people, because I almost have to TI what it is I'm experiencing and then use my NI to kind of like gain perspective of what it is that I'm even doing. And then I feel like I can be around people a little bit more. But like when my dog passed, literally it took me 4 or 5 days. Like I couldn't even talk to like close family members about it. It was just like a lot. So yeah.
I'm so glad you said that, Réna, because I think that is a big thing that I have realized, especially in the past like 6 months, especially. I think that, like, I agree with Diane. I think that it's often hard for me to really feel things unless I'm around other people. And like we said before, we kind of just like I'm feeling everyone else's emotions too. So I'm kind of like faking feeling my emotions. I'm just like feeling theirs and like thinking that it's mine. And I think that a lot of the time it does help me to process probably not super deep emotions with other people. Um, to other people, they a lot of the time they seem deeper than what they really are for me. And I think what I've then realized in the past 6 months, I've just honestly had a lot of past trauma unearthing. I think this kind of also answers the questions. I think it's really easy for me to just not process my emotions because it's just like that out of reach. That it's taken, I mean, a lot of these things that have been coming up for me were things that have happened in the past 10 to 12 years. And it took until now for them to really surface and me notice that something was just not right, and I started shutting down. I stopped talking to people. I mean, I literally think in the past 3 or 4 months, I like when Jeff was talking about his inbox just being like crazy, I never had that problem until the past like 4 months, because once I like felt how heavy all of my own emotions were that I was feeling all of a sudden, and people were helping me see, I don't know how to process them properly, but it's just too much, and it takes so much out of me trying to understand them, which I guess is also part of the problem. I've been told you're not really supposed to understand them, you're just supposed to like feel them, like whatever that means. And so yeah, I guess that probably wraps up my point. But I think when I'm really, really aware of like a deeply rooted emotional experience going on within me, that's when I don't want to be around other people, because it's already too much for me to handle. And the last thing I want is to then have someone try to help me the way I would normally help them, and ask me questions that I don't know the answers to because I don't even understand what I'm feeling. And then it just makes me more overwhelmed emotionally.
I just wanted to say 100% to that last piece, Ari. And it's actually triggering. I don't know if you guys have that response, but it's triggering if the other person is then sympathetic or too sympathetic or not sympathetic enough. It's almost like my TI gets activated too. And it's like, and it just makes it worse. It makes it 1,000 times worse.
Yes, I think that is something that is like equally as frustrating, because it's like I am so appreciative that they are trying to do that for me, but it's almost like you don't understand the gravity of what I'm feeling right now, and the way that it is just like disabling me from functioning properly and processing normal things properly. So having someone try to do the little pat on the back, or just like it's almost like no response is the right response, which is then like what's the point of me trying to express this to someone else because it's just going to ultimately make me feel worse. And it's not their fault. It's just my own inability to really even know what I'm feeling. Also, I just want to say, I know that Lisa said it first, and Réna, I know you said you agreed, but like feeling it like in your, like physically feeling, which I'm pretty sure I've had a few INFPs and some ESFPs have to explain this to me, because I think that I often can just like ignore what my body is telling me. And I've now started trying to do what Lisa said. And if I'm like noticing my body feeling a certain way, like I actually feel like I have to say it right now, like talking about the emotional experience is making me hot. Like I'm very warm right now. And I've been trying to vocalize those things because I'm scared if I don't acknowledge that it's happening, that it's not going to be real. And that I'm just going to push it past again. And like, you know, sometimes it's not necessary to vocalize all of the things that I'm feeling. But that's definitely something that I've started to try to do more. Yeah. Okay. That was the rest of my thought there.
Yeah, listening to you guys, it helps me see that as a general rule, really digging into my own emotions is not something that I take the time to do. But what you both said is when it's something really significant, I really resonate with what you said. I do have to do that on my own. That is my own work, because that, I think FI does need to be done on your own. It's just not something that I access often. It's not something I realize I even need to do. But, you know, thinking about over the last few years and some of the heartbreak of some family things, I've had to remove myself from my home and just go and be with my mom, who's an FI Dom, who could just sort of sit with it and let me process. And if I wanted anything, she was there. And if I didn't, it was also okay for her. And there wasn't that pull for her to try to fix it for me. I just had that time to process. So it was helpful to hear you guys say that so that I could kind of piece that together for myself too.
I said there's no way I would process emotions with other people. However, there are some FI DOMs, and I don't know if it's just by virtue of the fact that they are FI DOMs, but that I feel very emotionally safe with and have no qualms about like opening up to, even if it's like, you know, something I would cry about. There are some that I feel really emotionally safe around. So I would actually, in that sense, now knowing how helpful that can be, might even seek that out in the future of friends who are FI DOMs to be able to like one-on-one process something that I really need help with. Otherwise, like I probably just do it on my own. And I'm also curious, I was talking with Antonia about how sometimes doing FI work, which obviously comes into play a lot for an ENTJ, or is something that we need to consciously work on. I'll speak for myself, that I need to consciously work on. There's some interesting things where she's like, a lot of times it'll get kicked up to NI. Basically what Antonia was saying was it's very easy to start going down, where you were like, just feel your emotions. It doesn't need to be understood. And I can like take you down a tangent where you don't, it's just the what. The FI is the what are you feeling? What does that mean? Rather when NI will come in and then you're like, why does this mean this? What is that? You know, why am I this? Why am I that? What could they have been thinking during this time? And like, it just goes off on a tangent where it's like, oh, careful, you're actually not doing FI work anymore. You're doing NI work. So it was interesting to have to be conscious of that.
Well said, well said. And so the next question I have for you is, how do you approach relationships? What is your role? How do you perceive relationships?
I just feel like I need to say what my initial thought is, which is I just am in them. Like here I am in relationships. That's just like, I don't know. I'm sure I'll think of something more articulate than that, but it's just like, they just like, I'm in them. I just find myself in relationship with all of these people, which is often actually a problem at some point, because then I don't have time for myself. That's my initial thought. I'm gonna let other people jump on that one.
Yeah, I think this is such a huge question. It's like, where do you even start? And I don't know how to separate myself from the concept of relationship. So yeah, I'll just have to continue to kind of bubble up as other things are said.
I would say that for me, relationships are exceedingly important to me and also expensive. Which is what I keep saying this whole entire time, which is the most TE thing to possibly say, that I'm looking at a relationship in terms of how much it costs. But I think that's true. I think that when I was younger, I tended to have too many relationships that I couldn't maintain. And I think as I've grown older, I have begun to kind of, I guess, accept about myself that I'm not a person who can be deeply emotionally engaged with a ton of individuals, because it's too much for me. Because again, to what Jeff was saying earlier, my favorite friendships are the friends that I love, I talk to, we get very deep, and then we don't talk again for 3 months, and nobody is sad about it. And I think for me, the journey of my life has been cultivating my friendships in such a way that the relationships I do have actually do fill my cup rather than drain it, which means that I think I have a lot of very pleasant acquaintanceships with folks. But when it comes to what I would define as a true relationship, whether it's a friendship or, my romantic relationships, one at a time, uh, they are very strategically selected, in the sense that I want to make sure that I am providing and receiving great value from a few, rather than spreading myself too thin and not being effective with any of them.
And I think that that's maybe something that Effie can learn from TE, to be honest, because I feel like I have endless energy for relationships. And I don't care how tired I am, there's always energy for that. But that doesn't mean that they're all on the level that I want them to be, and they don't all reach the intimacy that I seek. And the more I, using your terms, I guess, waste my energy on high level, lots of interactions, the more cheap they feel. And so really, learning something from approaching relationships in general from a little bit more of a strategic standpoint, I think is something to be learned as an FE Dom, because when you are more selective in because it's true, you only have so much energy and there are so many hours in a day, right? I mean, that's true. I try to pretend that's not a thing, but it is a thing. And so if I really want to get those really meaningful connections, I have to be more intentional with where I spend that time. And so I love the way you said it, and just, maybe it's okay to consider being a little more strategic. It's not like a natural concept for me, but it might be a lot more rewarding for everyone in all the relationships, because you have time to be meaningful and have real connection.
I think I have the tendency, because I'm really good at starting relationships, like be that friendships, actual relationships, whatever, but I really struggle to maintain them. And I find that there's usually a drop off. And I do enjoy, I want to have relationships with people, and I want to have deep friendships and deep connections and things like that. But it's just something that it's like sand slipping through my fingers. I can never hold on to it, and it feels like I can never give it the energy that I need to fully maintain it. So usually I find that the friendships that have lasted the longest for me, it's always the other person who reaches out to me first, and they're kind of like the grounding point, where it's, as opposed to even if I really like someone, it's like Lisa said, it's resources. It takes effort, and sometimes I have that effort and sometimes I don't.
Something that came up just now that I think is interesting. First, I have had 1,000 different ways to TE the crap out of relationships. A call list of when I'm in the car, I know that I've got some time, so here's the people that I want to call, and they're in a certain order because I know I can only get to 5 of them. So I had in my task manager, I've assigned cadences to be make sure you get back to that person once every couple months, my uncle or something like that, or this person, I have a standing call every week or something. So I've had the crap out of relationships, and not always necessarily successfully. I had noticed that I have to capitalize on momentum. So if I'm like, I'm just in the mood to talk to people on the phone, I'm like, okay, who can I call? What's a list ready to go? Like, I have a list on my phone that I'm like, phone calls, and it pulls up exactly what like the people that I've been meaning to call. And so I have to ride that wave because I don't always get it. And if I don't, like, no matter what, if I have to make an important call and I'm not in like that space to do it, and I've just done 1,000 other things that day, I cannot bring myself to do it. I look at the phone. I even have like time to do it, and I'm just like, I just cannot. Like, and especially the longer that you go, like the worse that it is, because I'm like, now when I talk to them, I need to talk to them for an hour. And like, for sure, I'm not going to call them now because I don't have an hour. Yeah, I've really like had to try to come up with as best systems as I can to try to TE relationships. And Corena, what you just said that made me realize is like, yeah, I have to capitalize on the momentum, and you never know I never know when that's going to strike.
I feel like I need to directly respond to this because what you just described, I experienced, but the complete opposite way, where like I am literally ready to have those conversations at any time of the day, almost all the time. And I have to very consciously and intentionally be like, you can't do this. It's 3 p.m. You have 2 more hours of work. Or like I have laundry that's not been done for like a really long time, or there's like a pile of dishes in my sink. And I'm like, but this person really wants to catch up, and like we're in weird time zones, so like I should just do that. But I already know that when I do that, I'm gonna get sucked into it for hours. And Jeff, you know how easy it is to get sucked into conversations with me on the phone, because coming from the person who just said how hard it is to get them on the phone very long, I am proud every time we have had a long phone conversation. By the end of it, I'm like, this is an honor. Thank you so much for your time. So just felt like I needed to share the very opposite experience of what you just said.
And Réna?
So I was going to say, I feel like I have snack relationships where, you know, you have the, like, literally I'll say hello to everybody going down the street as I'm walking the dog. And in some ways, having a dog is great for this because you literally get to know your whole neighborhood, and you can have those light interactions that, for me anyways, don't have that drag. You know, they can stay lighter, and then you can selectively choose who you want to have like that hour and a half long conversation where you know, think about what you would do in the future, or like the really filling your cup types of relationships. And so I guess what I'm really trying to say here in a roundabout way is connection is important, and I can pick it up in various ways, but it is much more fulfilling for me to have connection when there's N in the conversation, be it NE or NI. I have noticed there's a huge difference. I can only talk about what is real for so long before I lose my shit. Like, I just can't do it. And it doesn't matter if it's like the ST, or actually maybe it does. I'm going to think about that. I think if it's hearing about like the daily happenings in someone's life, as an example, I can listen to it for about 5 or 10 minutes. But if it's just like all the well, I did this, and then I talked to so-and-so, and so-and-so's having a baby, and this person's having like 5-10 minutes, and then my mind is gone, and I'm not even paying attention. I'm just like, just stop. You haven't stopped. You're still talking. Your lips are moving. It's like, So I think in a way, if I have to have an S conversation for a long period of time, there better be a lot of T in it. And this goes back to what we were talking about before, Joyce. I think that at least I can get like my TI can get some kind of like activation here, and I get, whoo, then I jump back into my NI, and I'm back in NI land. And so maybe that's what it is. So if I'm not getting like the N part with my connective conversations, my cup feels like it's not really getting full. Like I'm touching it off, but that's why I say it feels like they're just snack conversations. And you can get by for a while with snacks, right? Like you can have snacks for weeks and you're okay, but every once in a while you need to have that 3 hour long conversation with that friend that you call like every 3 months, because I Like I have a list too, and it's like, oh, I haven't talked to that person, and it's fine because we have this okay understanding that we can have a really end conversation for 3 hours at a time, and then I won't talk to you again for 6 months. All good.
Quick note on that, Réna. I think that's that the N is a really important piece. Like there are two people recently, I have time for absolutely nothing. I just don't, like, especially random phone calls. Like, but I ended up meeting up with two different people that just happened to be N's recently. And like what was supposed to be like half hour, just kind of like get to know you, turned into like 3 and 4 hours. And it was not draining at all. It was actually like, I was more enthusiastic after that. That is not the norm, but like the N definitely makes a difference. The other thing you said is about people that are like, oh yeah, they're still talking. Their mouth is still moving. And like, I am deathly afraid. Like, I don't know why I am so like, ugh, about this. Well, probably because of the bandwidth, but like people that I've had people where I've said one, yeah, bandwidth. Yes, that's what I said. All right. I've had people that I say one word and like they will talk for 40 minutes. And like I've actively avoided those people because I see them like it's a neighbor or it's something else. And like I will go far out of my way physically to avoid those people, like around places. And I don't know how to get out of those situations without being a dick. The last person that I did that to, which like I wanted to leave the conversation, and I've been so like since I was 16, like I don't know how to nicely exit from those, so I'll just let them keep talking, and more I'm just dry, like it's driving me crazy. Last person I did that to, I was like, hey, like I actually have to go, and I was walking as we were talking, and he thought I was being rude, and I haven't talked to him in 3 years. So, and that's like somebody I have to see. It's just like a neighbor, and I'm like, the one time I finally like asserted myself. So those people, maybe it's a bandwidth thing, I would say, but I don't know how to get out of those conversations, so I avoid them entirely.
Just looking for those TE tips on how can I efficiently leave conversations I don't like. So if anyone has...
Not looking anymore. I asked ChatGPT. It had some fantastic it had some fantastic suggestions for me. ChatGPT is the best for social situations you don't know how to approach. Like, highly recommended.
Amazing. We might have to have an episode on that. And so I'm on to the next question. How do you feel about hierarchical structure? How do you respond to people who you perceive as above or below you?
I love this one. I think, interestingly enough, this is a conversation that came up with a couple of other FE DOMs as well. And we kind of identified the fact that we tend to try to flatten hierarchical structures. And so then as we were thinking about this, we were like, okay, so is this something that's different because of the fact that we're using NI? And we haven't totally got to the bottom of this. So I think this is great that we get to talk about it now. But I have noted that SI-FE seems to be more wedded to the hierarchy, than NI-FE because, or sorry, FE-NI. Because at the end of the day, we're always looking for who really has the power in the room, right? Because if you know who you can influence or who you need to influence, then you can make sure everyone's needs are met. So you don't get stuck on the fact that hierarchically this person's in charge. You acknowledge it, and you'll use it when you need to. But at the end of the day, if you're really about trying to create harmony in the organization or in the environment, you have to know who really has the ball, because that's the person that you need to be able to influence such that you can, as we say, create harmony and make sure everyone's needs are met.
I totally agree. I think saying flattening it is exactly what we do. I can't even express the number of conversations that I've had with people that I work with, like a really large quantity of STJs and STPs, like a lot of them. And they are often confused by the way that I interact with people who are like SVPs and above, who I'm talking to the same way I would talk to them. And they're just like, what are you doing? Like, this is not Gallup, like nothing's making sense with what you're doing right now. Like, how do you not? And it's just one, it's like, I don't even think I think about it. I just talk to everyone like they're a person. and that we're all just people. Like, yes, I'm not that I don't have an additional layer of respect for people who've like earned these roles, but the way that I interact with them is the same way that I would interact with another person, which I also think, like Réna said, it if you are able to connect with people who, you know, have the ability to help you influence everyone's needs getting met in some type of way, even like whether that's at work or some other situation, I think it's just like unconsciously we're just like, we know that and we're doing that. Like this I guess is just like an actual example. When I moved here, I had just very briefly in passing interacted with one of our SVPs in marketing, and she lives in the same area I do, and she kept saying, she was like, let me know if you ever want to get drinks or dinner, and people were like, oh, she's just saying that to be nice, like she doesn't mean that. And I was like, I feel like she is a really obviously a people person, and like no one invites the SVP to things because they're the SVP. And so I texted her on a Saturday because she gave me her phone number, and I was like, "Hey, I don't know if you actually like wanted to do this, but if you wanted to go get dinner or drinks, I would love to." She was so excited. We had the greatest time. I spent 4 hours with her. And when I told people later, they were so confused and immediately also like, wait, but can we do that? And I'm like, I mean, if you talk to people like they're people, you can do a lot of things. So that was my long-winded answer and off of Réna. But yeah, I don't really think I like see hierarchy. I just see people.
Yeah. And I would say I'm aware, there's a respect for it, but I don't care. What you guys said already, like, it's just relating to people as people. And Réna said it really well in that it doesn't really matter who the president is, like who's really in charge here. That's who, if we need to make some change and we need to move people in a certain direction, then you have to key in on who that person is, and you have to figure that out. And yeah, what you said, Ari, in terms of, you know, going out with people, I think sometimes that's associated. People who maybe don't use FE as a dominant look at that as like, oh, you're just brown nosing, you're trying to work your way to the top. But it's not what it is at all. It's just this person reached out in a human way, and that sounds fun to me, and like, let's do the thing. It doesn't matter that we're, you know, subordinates or whatever it is.
I was just going to add the brown nosing piece. I have to check myself sometimes because I think my tendency is to go the other way, and I will have the tendency to sometimes not mock, that's the wrong word, but there's always some kind of sarcastic, like, often I'll use myself first, and I'll use like degrading humor and say something about myself, and then demonstrate that, you know, we're all human first. And as part of that exchange, I usually get in like a little couteau on the side, and then that establishes this relationship that you can mess with this person even if they're the VP, even if they're the president of the company, it doesn't matter. And that's what I think is confusing to the SI DOMs, or sorry, not the SI DOM, but the SIFE, in that they're like, what just happened there? But you tend to create a situation, and I don't do this purposely, it's how I interact with people. There's always a situation that either I make fun of myself, and then I make fun of them, and then we're all making fun of each other, and then the sarcasm comes out. And then you've just established that, as you said, we're human first. So it doesn't matter where you fit in the organization, you can do that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that really helped me understand something, because it's not about precedent. It's not about how we behave in some theoretical situation. It's really about the moment and how we're vibing and what seems appropriate right now. Mm-hmm.
I'm loving what you guys are saying, and I'm actually loving the commonalities that I'm seeing. I'm wondering if Corena and Jeff are having the same experience listening to you guys, in the sense of the wanting to flatten the hierarchy, because I feel like that very much hits home for me as well. And I'm wondering, again, it seems like an NI-SE thing, maybe more than a FE versus TE kind of situation. It's funny because originally when I even heard this question, you know, like, how do you feel about hierarchies, or what do you think about hierarchies? my thought was like, well, I don't think about hierarchies. That's just short answer. I don't think about it. And specifically though, as I drilled into it in my head, I feel that probably more so maybe than the FE DOMs. Like, again, I think I'm aware of hierarchy as existing as a concept. I think when I look at myself, I like to know where I am maybe on the hierarchy, specifically in a work environment, just to like, it gives me some grounding to know like where I am. But I think that when I look at, on the hierarchy, myself and below, no difference. I will talk to the janitor just the same way I will talk to the CEO. I won't think about whether I can utilize this for some nefarious purpose or some intention that, I'm having conversations with people because they're people. When I think about the hierarchy of me and above, same thing, very much like Ari said, just talk to the people like they're people, and have that. But I do think maybe a subtle distinction there, being a TE DOM rather than an FE DOM, is that when it comes to the job at hand, I am very much looking and noticing who's competent, and I think that that's really important to me, not on a personal level. I will chat with the person all day long, and I can have really friendly personal interactions with people. But if I note that somebody is not competent at their job, whether they are above me or below me, I'm going to pay attention to that. And specifically, if a person is potentially above me on the hierarchy and I do not see them as being competent, I'm going to struggle with it. Maybe it's sort of a meritocracy situation in my head of, I feel that we should, if you're going to be above me, you should be better than me at whatever the task is, not as a human. That's not a thing. Or at the very least, I should have respect for the way that you conduct yourself at work. And if I don't see that, it's frustrating. But again, I think I very much have the ability to separate that out from the human. So when I'm looking at, X person as the VP of operations, I can have an opinion about them. But then when I look at them as a person, I can have a very different opinion about them. And it's easy for me to compartmentalize my feelings about them in such a way that when I'm thinking about them as a manager, I absolutely can't stand them. When I think about them as a person, they're fabulous.
Well, I think there like two different hierarchies, or maybe even more, because at work, that's a very different hierarchy. And like you said, if someone is above me, they better be competent. Otherwise, why are they in that position? Like if you're in charge of something, you should be able to do it. But like if someone's below me hierarchically, then I don't necessarily like look down on them or anything like that. I do think there is I have this tendency to, if I really respect a person, then we lost Jeff. But yeah, so if I really respect a person, then I almost have like this internal hierarchy where if there's someone that like I perceive as above me, not necessarily in an actual status point, then I think there is a different way that I react to that person as opposed to someone that and I think it's mostly to do with respect. Like someone that I either really respect or who I perceive as having more knowledge than me, then it's almost like I treat them kind of as a mentor in a sense, as opposed to like a friend. And it's hard for me to break that friend boundary because it's like, I'm learning from you, therefore you're above me. But like if it in different senses, like I could care less if someone is a millionaire or if someone is like dirt poor. Like in that way, I don't think I don't even think I think about that sort of stuff. So yeah.
I think that there's a lot of crossover here. And it is interesting to think if this is just more related to NISE and because we're all EJs, there's a lot of similarities because I approach a work situation very different. I've been, in a career for a while now, and I'm trying to grab onto something specific that you guys said, but I can't do it right now. But yeah, I'm excited to be able to watch this back and sort of think about it more because I don't disagree with what either Lisa or Corena said. And in some ways, I agree with what you said. So help me figure out what that is. Anybody?
Interesting conversation on hierarchy. I think that leveling out an organization makes a lot of sense. There's also studies that show that that's the best way to run an organization because you don't have to go through a lot of bureaucracy or procedures or having to go through all those tiny things to get one little thing done. So, yeah. All right. And so, thank you, everyone. We will continue this chat in part 2. This has been extremely insightful. And I'm really enjoying the camaraderie that you're both having too. Of course, there are differences, but there's also moments of shared EJ-isms between you both. Thank you, Corena, for setting this all up, getting everyone together, being the lead organizer, yeah, and sparking this whole chat and getting the PH camaraderie all here. And for Lisa, she has a book that I'll link below, and you should check it out and see if you'd like to purchase it, because, you know, gotta support your local ENTJs or your global ENTJs. Just support ENTJs, period. And it's really great to have an ENTJ like Jeff on too. You know that if you've made his to-do list that you're his friend, he's like, yeah, I'll prioritize you there. You're on my task manager if I care about you. So that is a sign of love if you see him putting you into his system. And Diane, thanks for helping out with the videos all the time and being able to put type concisely and boil it down into these NI nuggets with me. I appreciate it. Yeah. And Ari, it's really cool learning about you and how you can be chill with the highest people in the organization. You make them feel like humans, where I think people at the top of organizations almost feel similarly to celebrities, where people don't treat them like human. They're like, oh, you see me as my label, or you see me as this thing higher than you that you put on a pedestal, but no one talks to me like I'm a person. So yeah, it's good that you talk to them like they're human beings, because they need that. And Réna, thank you for being open and vulnerable with your emotions and sharing about your life, and that you like big talk. So Jeff was really vibing with you there, and I'm sure a lot of people in the audience too. So thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you in part 2. Take care.